All right, and I think tonight we are live here with Peter Cush, an interview with an umpire. You guys recognize this too, of course. It's non-copywritten, of course, so they must have changed an eighth note here and there. But on the line tonight with us is Peter Cush, professional umpire. Welcome aboard. Peter is mobile, right, Peter?
I am on 290, and just like we started talking about, it just started pouring and then flashes of lightning. So get the arc ready.
Okay. Are you hands-free, I hope?
You know it.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's the right thing to say in Massachusetts. So
Just
yeah,
like
we
when I use
wanted
the urinal, always hands-free.
always hands-free, man. Gotta be hands-free, just like some of the defensive plays sometimes you see in baseball in the infield, hands-free.
Hands-free.
1986 World Series, Bill Buckner, but we digress. So
Let it go. Let it go.
yeah, I let it go. Believe me, I go back and I say that that poor guy should never have taken the deep boop, boop, for that. But
Well, they had another game. They could have won. They could have won Game 7.
yeah, they lost 7-3. Marty Barrett struck out on the last pitch from the Mets closer that year. I remember he struck out in the last pitch. Oh God, Sid Fernandez.
Yeah.
Sid Fernandez. I
Which is funny
remember.
because you remember that so differently now because of all the World Series the Red Sox have won. But that you'd still be bitter about that if they hadn't won all those World Series in the last couple of years.
I'm not bitter about it. I think that my recollection is that the New York Mets were really, really cocky, and they said that hey, we beat the best pitching with Mike Scott with the Houston Astros, and we're not worried about Boston, and when Boston went to New York because the Mets had home field advantage, and we won the first two games. Mets fans were like, okay, even though the Red Sox, I think, won 96 games that year, maybe 98. The Mets won 104, I want to say. Maybe. I thought they had 48 losses, but the Mets were very cocky, and for every right they should have. They had a great catcher in Gary Carter, but when they went down 2-0, man, I was living on Easy Street. I said, we got these guys, but anyway.
That's the problem. That's the problem with those 7-game series. You never let that 2-0 get you in a false sense of security.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I totally agree. And that's what happened. So, Peter, you're doing. Where's the last place you umpired?
Let's see. Where was I yesterday? I was out in Dedham yesterday. Actually, I did a Legion game out in Dedham. Nice 8:00 start. Nothing better than getting home around midnight.
I'm a drummer. I know how it feels.
It is amazing how you can go from like point A to point B, and it's just logging on miles. You just hop on the highway and you find a baseball field, and you go home. Try to find some dinner.
Yeah. Well, the only dinner you have is Wendy's, Hardee's, Burger King, and McDonald's.
I always talk about trying to make food in advance and prepackaged food. I don't have the foresight to do that. If I prepackaged food, I'd eat it as a midnight snack anyway, so it wouldn't make a difference.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, life on the road. As a drummer, I mean, I sometimes pack up at 12 o'clock at night, and thankfully, my beautiful wife always has something leftovers ready for me to eat. And then I have to come home and watch TV with the closed captioning on because I don't want to wake her up. Not that I can hear anything anyway. But hey, so let's talk a little bit about you and I. We go back and forth with this, and again, you guys who are tuning in live, it is what is it? Today is the 6th. There we go, a little blurry there. It is the 6th of July, and So it looks like, yeah, here we're back. We have Peter K, Peter Cush, the Cush man, um, on his way to potentially umpiring a game tonight. So what's going on with the name changes? We've been talking about this, and I will be dead right honest with you. Let me ask you a question. Would any of this be going on? Name changes, and it's been going on for a long time. Redskins, the Chiefs, the Indians, Chief Wahoo. But has George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement pushed us along? What do you think?
I definitely think there's a connection.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think it was kind of a pretty big catalyst to getting to this point, and it's kind of trickled down. It's like similar to trickle down economics. Now that you've started to see some of the bigger dominoes fall, like the Redskins and now the Indians, recently announced that they'd be changing their name in the next couple of years and phasing out Chief Wahoo altogether. I think you're starting to see the doors open for smaller, more local changes. You're seeing it a lot in Massachusetts. So you're seeing the state now putting pressure on school districts to change their name from Native American names to something a little more different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the big thing is, I was looking back too, and over the last couple of weeks, and I noticed like a lot of, Major League Baseball teams, and maybe because it's such an old sport, but then the and National Football League have teams named after, like I said, I won't call them Native American, the indigenous people, whether they're tribes or, but I noticed like the NBA, they had one, I look back, they had one team change their name. That was the Washington Bullets, right?
Yeah.
But I look back in NBA, maybe the Kansas City Scouts, the Omaha, whatever they were. But a majority of teams named after indigenous people of North America, it seems like MLB and the NFL kind of take the cake in that category. I haven't really seen too much NFL and four teams a few teams within the NHL. But I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think?
I think the biggest kind of the biggest audience for that is actually the college ranks. You see a lot of, there are a few, the Blackhawks, the NHL, mm-hmm. Which again, seems less of an outrage, but then again, hockey's always kind of like that third or fourth tier sport, depending on, what market you're in. But, you do have the Redskins, you do have the Indians, but the college, in the college ranks, there are a lot of Native American names. And I think that's kind of where a lot of this started too, because although the professional sports, there's, you do have the big teams. I think the college, there were so many teams, and even looking back locally, I mean, the UMass Lowell, Dartmouth College, you had a lot of teams that had, Native American names who changed over the years. So I would say that actually I think college is kind of the big ticket item for that.
Yeah, I you know what, now that you say that, growing up, I mean, first of all, I always grew up thinking that, when I heard like the names of those teams, the Blackhawks, the Chiefs, I always thought of them as like superior fighting forces that were actually just outnumbered and outmachined by American colonists. I mean, interestingly enough, I was watching a few documentaries today, and I'm wondering which way America would have went if we had remained a British colony. Okay, and I mean that only because it wasn't really after the Revolutionary War, and the British actually agreed in 1783 that the 13 colonies were the United States. The Native Americans, the indigenous people, they they saw the new Americans start to encroach upon their frontier more than ever before. And that's why the War of 1812, a lot of, the Indians in America fought with the British, and I think the British actually looked at the native people, the indigenous people here, a little bit more respectively than, the Americans, as we kind of advance, and our war with Mexico. And so I'm just wondering where we would be if we were still, not digressing, but it's just an interesting way that we look at these names of sports teams. But I really want to believe that, the owners outside of the Redskins, okay, and the history of the Redskins franchise, I was watching a video, and they were interviewing all the folks outside of the Washington Redskins who are now the Washington football team. I don't know how you feel about that, but they would say, "You ever change this name, I'll never come to a game again." And there was only one black woman that was all in favor. She's all dressed up in the Redskin garb, but she says, "No, most people don't know. I mean, that it's a pejorative, it's a slur word, right?"
Right.
And also, too, Redskins, the Indians, the indigenous people would sometimes call themselves Redskins to differentiate themselves from other tribes. So, I look at that and I say, wow, from like 200 years ago, how we use the names now, are we really using them to, create tension or use as slurs? Or are we honoring those peoples, right? Massachusetts flag has a indigenous person of Massachusetts holding a spear, right?
Right.
Your thoughts? I went on a little long there, but
no, it's always good to get a little kind of historical context. But I think you're right. It is very interesting what is in a name, and
right.
because I've kind of gone both ways on this. I like tradition. I love the pageantry of college and professional sports. And, you think about it, and sometimes you don't think about the other side of it. And, there are a lot of teams that have changed their names, and we don't even think about it anymore. For instance, Stanford changed their name back in the 70s, and nobody talks about that anymore. Dartmouth used to be, Dartmouth, although they were never officially Indians, they used an Indian in their logo. And now they're the big green, and that was done in the early 70s. And I think over time people adjust, but I think people, especially this issue because of politics where it's at, people get so dug in on both sides. Got to change everything, make everything non-offensive versus damn the torpedoes, I'm going down on this ship.
Yeah.
I remember when I was looking at colleges. I went down to Quinnipiac down in Hamden, Connecticut, and back then they were the Braves. And within like 2 years, I'm dating myself now. This is back in the early 2000s, and by the time I had enrolled, I went to school. I didn't go to Quinnipiac, but I see hockey games. They switched from the Braves to the Bobcats. So again, and now nobody looks back at the old Braves days. And it wasn't an offensive logo; it was just two arrows crossed in a Q. But nobody looks back. Everybody's embraced the Bobcats, and so I think a lot of these teams will eventually phase it out. I think the other problem too is there's a lot of on both sides politicking. Mm-hmm. And I think you do see some caricatures. Like, let's be serious. I mean, I always liked the Chief Wahoo logo. I think it looks great on a hat.
Me too.
But when you look at it, it's a caricature.
Yeah.
And there used to be this pizza place around Grafton Circle, the Rotary, that was called Willie's Wigwam Pizza, and it had the same Cleveland Indians logo on a sign, just jamming a piece of pizza in his mouth, and you're like, whoa, this is a little offensive.
Yeah.
And so I think it also is how it's portrayed.
Yeah.
And it just kind of to go by numbers, to bring it back, like Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Massachusetts has the most Indian names for their high school sports teams at 26. So then, I mean, the next state on that list is Connecticut with 11. So they have more than twice as many native teams than any other state. And actually, they have more. I'm going to do some quick math here for a second, so bear with me. They actually have more than all the other states put together, because New Hampshire has 8, Vermont has 3, Rhode Island has 2, and Maine actually has 0, because in 2019 the governor outright banned the use of native logos, names in intercollegiate sports. So Massachusetts has more than every other New England state put together. And it's you look at it and you say, well, you have a lot of old people who like to go. I don't mean age-wise, but you have a lot of old school people who like to go out to the Friday night game and cheer on their team. And they were the Indians, or they were the Warriors, or they were the Tomahawks when they went to school, and when their parents went to school, and when their grandparents went to school. And it's a hard tradition to let go of.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, the word brave, I mean, that's not a bad word. I mean, just because a white man is using it, and I mean, who's to say too, what color were indigenous people here, right? I mean,
sure.
If you think about what their original color, red man and redskin, and maybe I'd be redskin too if I worked in the sun all day. Well,
you haven't seen me after 5 games, doing umpiring 5 games. I look like a lobster.
Well, right. And look at what they call people down south, right? Rednecks, right? Right. Oh, you're working all day and you're a redneck, I mean, because the sun's burning the back of your neck. I mean, there's always, skin color. It's an amazing thing how we identify people as, but just based on perception. He's fat, he's thin. Hey, look at that tall guy. Look at that black guy. Look at, I mean, we identify people by our perception, right? I mean, so it's what we see. It's like, hey, look at that guy over there. Which one? The guy with the yellow coat. Well, there's 2 guys with yellow coats. Well, the fat guy with the yellow coat. Oh, okay. Or the skinny guy, or the black guy. I mean, and but at what point? I mean, I look at the name Brave and I say, first of all, that isn't that what native the Indians of North America would consider some of their finest warriors? Golden State Warriors. There's one I missed, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also easy maybe for someone of European descent to get behind and say, they're Braves, they're this and that, and but we're going to beat them anyway.
Well,
I don't know.
Again, going back to history, because I know, again, you're the big history buff, a lot of these names came about because they were capitalizing around the brink of the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s in America. They were really capitalizing on, the spaghetti Western / the idea of what it was like. Because remember, the before we had all these sci-fi outer space novels and movies and shows, all the books were about what the adventures out west were. And so a lot of these names kind of originated because people were fascinated with the Western style of life. It was the basically outer space back in the 1800s.
I think about this movie that came out in the 50s and the 60s, and was a Wild Bill, whatever, and a lot of these Civil War guys, and after the Indian Wars, they all went into the circus, right? And they just told the tale wherever they went, and they sold a lot of tickets to, portraying, what it was like. You're right. It was kind of like live theater, right?
Right. And a lot of these schools and teams really took off because they wanted to jump on that. But going back to your point about what the really, I think personally the big catalyst was, and I was younger at the point, but it was just when I was really starting to watch sports but understand sports. Back in the '95 World Series, you had the Braves and the Indians, and that was the first time you really had the two teams with Native American names playing each other. And all I remember, and a lot of people remember back then, besides the fact that the Braves actually won, was you had half the stadium doing the tomahawk chop, and then the other half of the stadium doing the Chief Wahoo, the whooping. And of course, back then, I'm like all over that. I wanted Cleveland to win. I was walking around the house whooping, and looking back, I'm like, back then it was cool, but now you look back and say, that might not have been in the best of taste, but I think that really kind of brought the issue to light, because up until that point too, you had a lot of the native tribes had other problems to worry about, because back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, tribal poverty was at 40% of people living on Native Americans were in poverty, and their unemployment rate was 10 times the national average.
Yeah.
So,
and alcoholism and depression, suicide.
Exactly. By the 90s, people started to say things, because they finally kind of, although it's still higher than the non-natives and living on the reservations, you still see, they finally were able to say, okay, let's address this issue. And so I think that was kind of the first, because it really brought it to the front and center. Like, hey, you have white people walking around in headdresses, tomahawk chopping. And I think that really started to, start the conversation, like, hey, maybe this isn't cool. And I think it's just kind of escalated since then. Yeah. And I think that's where we are today.
Yeah. As you say that, I'm thinking, how, the presentism, the word that we used, presentism is how we, see the past, and, we're living in present time. So it's presentism. And will we do that today? No. Did we do it 200 years ago? Yes. The history of the world has always been how one culture dominates another. And now we're caught in between. The United States is not caught, actually. We should exemplify. We're not the only country in the world with racial divides going on here, and that's as we redefine our sports teams, our missions, and the way we name teams and things like that. It's easy to base them on culture, and over here in Webster, you got the Bartlett Indians. But you had the Nipmunks all through this area, and I never looked at it as an insult, but I think that there's a difference between. I think the United States could be a leader in this, and this whole 4th of July thing that coming up. I'm hearing all this stuff about they're shooting off fireworks, and the smoke is blowing into poor neighborhoods, and I'm it's easy to divide people, but that's not leadership, right? Bringing people together is tough. To divide people, ask Adolf Hitler, right? It's easy to divide people. That's not fucking leadership, And this is YouTube, so I'm not editing that out. We're live, by the way. Thank you. But, so I think, but we have an opportunity in this country to, not say, oh, I'm white, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what my ancestors. I'm a French guy. I'm not making any excuses. Systemic racism, whether it's toward the Black community, Asian, the indigenous people of America, but I don't think policy and just changing names changes things. And I think, as you said earlier, though, over time, right? If we change the names from the Braves to the Bobcats, over time, people are never going to remember. Oh, they were once called the Braves. Why were they called that? You know, we are maybe, at least in the United States, trying to usher in some kind of new age of civility, understanding. But I think too, there's a lot going on here. I mean, you look at the Irish, the logo for the Irish, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, and is that okay? But I think if we name things after, I think what we're looking at now with the name changes, with particularly as it refers to the Native American Indians.
Right.
They were 1% of our population at this point, pretty much pushed to the brink of non-existence, and here we are living out their names as like they're still a peoples that are thriving in this country, and they're not unless they own a casino, right?
Right. Well, just like you said, I mean, when I say Stanford football, what do you see for a logo? Everyone sees that stupid tree, or everybody thinks the cardinal, or that's what they see. Nobody remembers the Stanford when they were the Stanford Indians, because that's what they were prior to being the Cardinal.
And when did they make that change?
See, I'm trying to think off my head, top of my head. I'm not. I don't know off the top of my head when they changed it, but it was, I would say, somewhere in the 70s. Okay. I think.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. So it was the mid 70s.
So long before the whole BLM, Me Too PC movement.
Right. I mean, I honestly think a lot of the Native American names were kind of trending out. But again, there are so many. And there are some you don't even think about. Like Illinois. When you say Fighting Illini, you don't even think the Illini are. It's a Native American name. Yeah. So a lot of them you don't even think about it. Quite honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because I think the majority of the names, high school and college sports teams totally outnumber the pro leagues, right? I mean, absolutely. So they give it a name, and but if you think about, okay, we're in New England, right? And I live in the town of Kenny Bisson, USA, right? And I have a.
All right. Now, are you your own country yet? Have you seceded from the union yet?
I'm trying, but they won't let me. They still want me to pay taxes, but.
Yeah, you can call whatever you want. Just pay your taxes and your store bill.
Exactly right. But if I have a town, right, am I going to name my football team, the Kenny B Butterflies, or am I going to name them after a little bit of, hey, what went on in this town? The right. Kenny B Industrialists, the Kenny B. Right. Oh, wait a minute, the Warriors. Whoa, I mean, that's there's sports and fighting, right? And maybe that's the problem. We've always associated these names with bringing out the hostility of the indigenous people that were not really hostile at all. They just wanted to keep what they had, right?
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was doing a game earlier this year at Neshoba, and I think this is the last year they're going to be called the Chiefs, but the Chieftains, I'm sorry. And I was joking around with the first baseman. I was working the bases, and I was asking, because I looked at, they had 3 potential names for the changing of the names, and one was the Bears. I think they're going to be the Foxes or the Wolves. But one of the choices was the Apples, because Neshoba has Bullen orchards, and there's a couple of apple farms out that way. Yeah. And I was joking with the first baseman, like, that is the stupidest potential name, the Apples, the Neshoba Regional Apples.
Yeah, that's great. They're really, cries fear into the enemy.
I would be terrified to go play if I was Marlboro High, the Tigers, I'd be terrified to play the Apples.
Yeah. Well, if I was the opposing team, I was called the Lawnmowers, because I have to drive over those apples. I remember having an apple tree in the backyard, and it's just mow those apples right up. So if I'm a rivalry, you know, I wouldn't pick the apples up. I'd just like mow right over them and let the bees have them. But I call myself the lawnmowers, you know, it's a problem solved, Peter. Right. But come on, really?
Exactly.
The apples. I mean, you know, so are they going to change all their coloring to like ruby red or?
Well, that's the other thing too, because they have. I always liked Neshoba's. Actually, Neshoba's hat is always one of my favorites. It's a golden, like a light golden N on a nice like dark green hat with the spear going through. And I always liked that logo personally. But yeah, they'd have to change the school colors. I mean, unless it's like, what's that? The Granny Smith apple that's green.
Yeah.
but at the same time, there are some schools that are like, there are some school districts that are saying no. I think it was what was it? It was I think it was the Agawam. Yeah, the Agawam Brownies. That's the name of the team in Agawam, and the school district voted to keep the colors, to keep the name, and they're not changing it. So it is also because Grafton just changed. Grafton is now known as the Gators because you know there are so many alligators swimming around in what was that, Crystal Pond?
In Grafton, Lake not Lashaway.
What is it?
Lake Ripple.
Yes, Lake Ripple.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so many. I mean, I used to go fishing there, and I used to get bits. In fact, I don't have any toes left.
But I mean, again, it's and the other ones too. You look at like the Shrewsbury Colonials, and I know we're getting away from the Native Americans, but there's a petition to change the Shrewsbury High logo from the Colonials, and you know that's it kind of gets to a point where when do you say enough is enough?
I know exactly right. Exactly right. The Colonials, the colonizers,
yeah, that's what they're saying, and
right.
And I don't think there'll ever be a right answer, and I think that not to say states' rights, but let the individual school districts make up their minds as to what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's my cop out. My politician cop out is let the individual school districts decide.
Mm-hmm.
The only other story, because I know we want to talk a little about the Futures League, but the only other story I'd like to say is North Dakota. We'll take a little trip and go up to North Dakota. For years, the team was called the Fighting Sioux, and North Dakota is pretty much not known for any other sport except for ice hockey, and they have a pretty prolific hockey program and a really, really loyal fan base. And they have a very kind of Republican conservative legislature out there. Mm-hmm. And when the NCAA came out and said, you're changing your name, they said no. They sued the NCAA. They lost. They sued the NCAA again, lost again. And then it went through the appellate court for years. And you look at the tax dollars that went into this process. And that's another thing you have to look at too, is it really worth is it worth justifying all that money, allocating all that money for a state that doesn't have a ton of money to allocate it to fighting a name change?
Yeah. They
eventually did kind of coalesce to changing the Fighting Hawks, similar to what UMass Lowell did, from becoming the Chiefs to the Riverhawks.
Yeah.
But there's another one. I mean, you talk about UMass Lowell, and you ask anybody now, and everybody pretty much thinks about the Riverhawks. Although a few of the older fans will, still say Chiefs, but most people know them as the Riverhawks now.
Yeah, I mean, and South Dakota is actually, it's interesting. That's where a lot of the Dakotas that's where it was kind of like the last of the indigenous tribes of North America were actually pushed out and on into Canada, But no, I mean, I hear that. I mean, it's again, it's like picking the name that, I think it would be terrible to federally legislate, on a federal level that you can't use this name, you can't use that name. That is a total tie-up in the Supreme Court, man. Who wants that fight? You know, I think that doing what's right is important, and if people in the community have pride in their heritage and without defaming or throwing under the bus cultures that came before them. And I'll say that under all these names, the only one I don't like are the Redskins. I mean, that's a really, again, it's a pejorative kind of slur kind of thing. But other than that, and Chief Wahoo, the red face, the white hat, very cartoonish. I get it. Was used in a lot of Warner Brothers cartoons, but I mean, there's some things we can turn the corner on, but going to the next extreme, the ballet engineers, the puffin stuff baseball team,
HR puffin stuff.
HR puffin stuff.
HR puffin stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the road apples, maybe that's what they should Neshoba, which Neshoba is actually an Indian word,
Right.
Wachusett, Indian word. Lake Quinsigamond means Quinsigamond, Sycamond, Long Pond. I mean, these names will always be in American culture because it's American culture now. It's not English culture, So, unfortunately, we showed up on a bunch of boats, and here we are, But and I don't want to be that insensitive, but as again, I grew up, and I remember the Mass Pike had the hat, had the Indian through the arrow, the Indian arrow through the hat.
Yep.
They got rid of that. I mean, so yeah, over time, you're right. Over time, some things have been slowly percolating, but the whole George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, everybody has a turn at the microphone, but that doesn't mean that everybody deserves a turn at the microphone,
Right.
And again, there's divisiveness and there's leadership. And leadership is not legislated either. It's not that I signed this into law June 14th or whatever the holiday that was just. I'm sorry to be that if you know what that holiday is. But there's a reason.
If it gets me a day off from work, I'm all for it. We can have a celebrate Leprechaun's Day. I don't care. I'll take St. Patrick's Day off myself. But
they do in Suffolk County, though.
That's true.
Yeah. That's the only county in the state that gets that day off. So the rest of us go, what?
That's true, but I also think that's the only county in the state where you still can't go to a restaurant either. So
that's true.
Not that we want to kick that can of worms right now, Ken.
Nah, let's not. Yeah, but again, let's be respectful. Like I said, I loved a lot of the teams' names. I hate if they change the names because I think a lot of the names of teams, if people really do the history, have come from out of respect to to the indigenous people of this country, and but the history of man, whenever someone becomes subservient to someone else, doesn't matter what color your skin is, you're not treated too fairly. So what do you think about the collegiate league? What's going on with our friends at the Worcester Bravehearts? You know anything about them?
So you and I talk all the time, and I watch college baseball, not really during the regular season, but I watch it during the College World Series. I love the College World Series, even though the Longhorns fell short, but it's good to see Mississippi State kind of, break through. They deserved it. They pitched great.
Yeah.
But all the wood bat leagues are in full swing, and and again, this is my just general advertisement to all our listeners out there. There are some great leagues, whether it's in Worcester or whether it's, the NECBL. I shoot up to Keene all the time. Swap bats are in first place. Hope it continues. And, of course, the Cape League is always fun. But I did pull, because you and I have chatted a little bit about the Futures League, because we've always kind of, I know you have some inside information. I'm not gonna ruin it for people, but we've talked about what the future of the Futures League is, kind of redundant. But with the Woo Sox starting, there's always kind of been a great flash of lightning that just happened in front of me. But there's been some worry that with the Woo Sox coming to Worcester, that the Bravehearts would struggle at the gate. So I did pull up the attendance to this point in the season, and it's so I'm just reading down. Now again, there was no baseball in 2020 because of COVID. The only teams that had fans were New Britain and Nashua. Yeah. So I'm not going to use 2020's numbers because those are all screwed up.
And feel free to call it stupid COVID. That's what I've been calling it. Stupid COVID.
Yes,
should never have friggin' happened. Stupid COVID.
The virus of unknown origins.
Yes, of course.
We have to be careful because we don't want to get you demonetized.
Yes, of course.
Because I know you're making a ton of money off of this.
Absolutely.
Because you're paying me my appearance fee.
Absolutely.
So in 2019, Worcester was number 1 in the league, and their attendance per game was 2,574. So let's just say 2,600. Wow. Brockton was at 1,300, and it kind of goes down from there. And the only 2 teams who had less were Bristol, and who had under 1,000 per game was Bristol and Westfield, who are at 900. Now the league attendance is down as a whole, but Worcester went from 2,600 to this year they're averaging 800 fans a game.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So they're down almost 1,500 fans a game.
But is the attendance down throughout the whole league, Peter?
So looking at the numbers, the 2 big ones are Worcester dropped and Brockton. Brockton went from averaging 1,300 to now averaging 400.
Wow.
So they're down about 1,000.
Wow.
But interestingly enough, the 2 teams leading this year in attendance are Vermont and New Britain. Vermont, of course, a longtime single-A team. They lost their affiliation when MLB took over minor league baseball. It's a beautiful stadium in Centennial Field up in Burlington.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of it. It's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there many times. It's the oldest continuous minor league ballpark in the United States.
Wow.
And they have a very loyal following, so that doesn't surprise me that they have so many fans. But New Britain is averaging, they're averaging just over 1,000 fans a game. But aside from that, everybody else in the league is under 1,000. So you kind of, you take Bristol out because Bristol moved to the NECBL, and North Shore up in Lynn, or down in Lynn, I guess. My geography's bad. You take them out because they also moved to the NECBL. So the league is down, and you kind of worry that if Worcester continues to trend downward, that if they move the franchise, Norwich is only averaging about just under 600. Westfield is at 500. And again, Pittsfield is just above Worcester at 864. So the league this year, I don't know why. You think coming out of COVID, people would want to get out. So I was a little surprised when I was looking at the numbers. I was happy to see Vermont and New Britain because I love going down to New Britain. I love going up to Vermont. So yeah. I like both those teams. So I was happy to see them up there. But I don't know. Do you have a theory of why the league numbers would be down that far?
I don't. Well, first of all, that's why I asked you, because I don't think it's the Woo Sox coming to town. Anybody that knows baseball, that goes to a baseball game, you're going to get the people that go to the Woo Sox and they're a family, mom and dad and the 2 kids, and they go in and maybe they just like average knowledge of baseball, but is it really? I mean, it's definitely collegiate league and AAA is so much different, and anybody that knows baseball knows the difference. Secondly, anybody that knows the difference between, you could spend $60 at a Bravehearts game, and you can double that at a Paw Sox game, maybe plus, right? With the parking. I went to a Bravehearts game a few weeks ago. Parking was free. Food was reasonable, $7 a beer. You can drop 50 or $60, but something too. Don't be so cheap, because when you go out on a night out, prepare to spend money. Whether you're going to a ball game, whether you're going to a restaurant, right? Whether you're going to a concert, You say, hey, we have this money, we're going out tonight, and you spend it, and that's what you're supposed to do. That's what keeps the economy going. But
Right.
I think coming out of COVID has a big thing to do with it. I think. So speaking about fishing at the top of the hour, I have not had a fishing license in so many years. I had a pole that was sitting in storage for so many years. I have a friend with a boat that every year pre-COVID, we were saying, we're going to take this thing out. We're going to take this thing out. And every year we didn't do it. We didn't do it. We didn't do it. And this year, if it weren't for COVID, I would not have gotten my fishing license. Okay. I wanted to go out and do something different. I wanted to be out like, and I think even though all these venues are open, people are doing something different, I think. And it may not be to the ball game. It may not be. And yes, I think people are still uncomfortable gathering in crowds. We have this, stupid Delta variant that we're supposed to be scared of now, by the way.
Right.
So I think there's some of that, but I think people are out there. I think people are out there peppering their activities to what they really want to do, as opposed to what they're being commercially advertised to do. So I would say, a bang for your buck is. I don't think the Futures League is done by any means. There's just too much talent there. In fact, during the All-Star game this year, isn't there a Futures League collegiate game going on?
And I will actually be there. It's in New Britain. I bought my tickets today. $8. You can go down to New Britain. It's a great time. It's a nice old stadium. Used to host the Rock Cats, but now they're the New Britain Bees. And I got my tickets today. I enjoy the Futures League. And I do. It's my third favorite of the summer leagues. I like the Cape League and the NACBL a little bit better because the quality of ball is a little bit better. But you can't beat the price at like the Moose Sox, not the Moose Sox, the Bravehearts.
Yeah, I mean, hey, just for the record, NACBL.
NACBL, New England College Baseball League. They have teams up in all over New England, in New Hampshire, Massachusetts. You have Keene, you have Sanford, Maine, Winnipesaukee, all the way down to Bristol, Connecticut, South Kingston, Newport, Rhode Island, Danbury, Connecticut. It's a great league. Also, great ticket prices, $5. And the other thing about the summer wood bat leagues that makes it fun is that the teams really do what they can to make it a good experience for the fan, and it kind of strips baseball back to it's simpler, more pure. You're not looking at the guy making hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a college kid trying to get seen.
Right, exactly, and that's the difference between, if you know baseball, the difference between I've always said about AAA baseball, whether Worcester Red Sox or Rochester or whatever, it's the love boat. You're either on your way up or you're on your way down, right? With your career, right. That's why a lot of guys skip AAA and they go right up from AA. But you can get career 27 years old. I remember the line from Moneyball when they're going through the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, general manager of Billy Bean, and he says he's trying to make some trades, and he goes, "Oh, how about this guy, 27 years old, AAA? No, forget him." I'm like, wow. So 27 years old, lingering around in AAA baseball. That's pretty much where you have to go home to your wife at night and go, I don't know. I don't probably will ever get called up. How long can I do this? It's like being in a really bad band, but it's still paying the bills. Hey,
that's one of the great things I like too about independent baseball. And I know we talked about this, and this is why I'm such a masochist, because I love going to independent baseball because it's really that guy chasing his dream. Because you think it's bad when you're lingering at AAA. Imagine, playing your ball at Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or York, Pennsylvania, where you're basically living on a hope that you play well enough to get signed.
Yeah, and you're spending a lot of your money to be there.
Absolutely, because you're not getting paid. You're not getting paid very, very much, if anything.
No, you have to have the support from your family, your friends. I mean, how many, one out of how many thousands actually, make it up to the major leagues? And I mean, there's so much talent with the major league rosters. They know where to, if they need someone, they can go grab them. But yeah, I mean, I was watching the movie Field of Dreams. My wife says, I don't like this movie. I'm like, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. And I mean, and maybe we're missing the point. I mean, we've taken baseball, which is like, America has grown up with baseball, through the Revolutionary War, past that into the Civil War. It's always started as a game of rounders based on an English game of, a flat bat, and, the hitter would call out where he wanted the pitch. And then it became a game of aces. The first team who scores 21 points wins. And then all of a sudden, McKnight and Abner Doubleday, all these guys come in and change the rules, and the New York Highlanders become the New York Yankees. But baseball is underneath it all, man. Name or not, it's the sport that always got under my skin, and in a good way. And it's because of the history and and the relationship to the growing up of America. And
right, it is. It's honest when you look at it. I know people criticize baseball, saying it's slow and all that, but quite honestly, baseball is the perfect game. It really does exemplify America. It embodies everything there is to be American. No matter how far you're down, you always have an opportunity. You get your last ups, no matter how shit out of luck you are. Mm-hmm. You can suck for 8 innings, but you got that one last inning that you get your last ups and your last chance to make it.
Dave Roberts stealing that base. Yep. Dave Roberts stealing that base against the Yankees, right? So
it's never over, baby. It's never over.
It's never over. And you know what? And just to kind of close it out a little bit, because we're up on the 6 right now. So, but just to say, the baseball, first of all, is not a slow game. The game has not changed. It's become a game of specialties, and that's, specialists. Let's bring in a righty. Let's bring in a lefty. I want this matchup and all that stuff. And back in the day when Ruth played, we'd, come in with a hangover and pitch, 9 innings, and there were no.
Who was that? Dwight Gooden, who went on a bender the night before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a great show for next time. We could talk about about baseball and how to how to fix. Because I have ideas of how to fix the game. I am very anti-shift.
Me too.
I mean, this is a good conversation for next time.
All right, let's keep that going, and then you know what? Let's talk about that, because what I will say is that back in the 1930s there were no friggin' night games, and so these were all matinee, and these were people that had to work or whatever. Kids showing up to the ballpark.
They took the trains to the game or buses.
Yeah, and they were 2.5 hours long, and but then you bring in a righty, a lefty, or this guy, and I get how the game has changed. But how the game really has changed a lot is that when you type in my name into Google, right, in 1 second, it tells you how quickly it retrieved 100 gazillion returns on my name in less than a nanosecond. It tells you that, right? This Google search produced this many findings within this many seconds. And that's also, too, the game has changed, but we don't live, again, it's presentism. We're basing the game on its purity as opposed to the way it is now in real time. And the game, well, you know what? If you don't like to watch the game for 9 innings, screw you. Don't watch it.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. But yeah, I mean, so any closing thoughts, Mr. K?
No, I would just say, like we talked about, get out there, get out to see your team, whether it's the Woo Sox or the Bravehearts, And, don't forget, Tuesday, New Brain, Connecticut, All-Star game. You can come down, buy me a beer. People are more than happy to talk baseball. God only knows I talk about it enough.
No kidding. So that's Tuesday. It looks like the 13th, right?
That's correct.
And that is that going to be on ESPN?
I don't know. Probably not. But
I have heard some things that may be televised somewhere, but I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Awesome.
I'll look it up. So Peter K, good talking with you, my friend. And,
all right, my man. Be good. I will see you when I see you.
You got that right. And to kick us out, you know this song. Oh, yeah. All right, Peter K, glad to have you today, man. And look for us on YouTube, Cities and Suburbs. And Peter, be safe out there, my friend.
You too, my friend. Be good, brother. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. All right, that was our good friend Peter Cush, professional umpire, as you heard. We have a lot of things to talk about. And, well, we'll be wrapping that up pretty soon, you guys. All right. Thank you for watching and re-clicking. Take care. Good night.